The world's longest illuminating light bulb is known as the Centennial light. Located at 4550 East Avenue, Livermore, California, it is managed and taken care of by the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department. It was manufactured in the year 1901. To put that into perspective, there's over 1 million hours in 114 years, and older than the world's oldest person to ever live at the age of 122. By the early 1900s, the light bulb, the incandescent bulb, was completely functional and was a new piece of technology in mass production. The problem is that even though the average carbon filament lamp at this point was very low illumination, they were built and made to last forever. Even if this wasn't the case, they could still last for decades. There was a certain point when companies realized that efficiency would be their end, and so eventually future brighter bulbs with much higher luminosity were made, but were designed with a guarantee to eventually burn out in order to keep producing these and to keep getting people to buy them. However, while this is unfortunately a part of marketing and mass production with most products in the modern age and the post-industrial age, since engineers have gotten a better understanding of electrical properties and the designs of light bulbs, the focus of this video centers around the design of light fixtures that arise from the industrial age and why there is a huge variance in styles of fittings of lamps, lights, and globes. This focuses on the artistic expression of optics that was given. What caught my eye with the idea for this video when I dug into the history of lighting decorations, each of these types served a purpose for specific buildings, jobs, and forms, just from the design of the glass to the fitter and the shade. It wasn't just that they looked nice, but they also had a specific purpose that comparted with the way they looked. I would argue that there's an artistic line and approach to optics and the design given to these objects as a result of both the function of and controlling light and visual beauty. The ambience of a light can give off a lot to a room, and you wouldn't think this at first to the average person that this is the case, but many of these designs are surprisingly intricate and can add a lot to value of a house and vibes it gives off. A good example of one of the earlier light fixtures was the era of gas lights and lamps. The mantle was a mesh bag that was laced with nitrates and thorium. Gas lights would become extremely hot, and so having a large enclosure around them would hopefully prevent a fire, hopefully, quote unquote, if knocked over. While carvings of flowers and leaf patterns on the globe was both a decorational style of Victorianism, it would allow for just enough light to pass through the foggy glass, but not too much that it is blinding for an indoor setting. Outdoor street lamps were much brighter and didn't have the need to have such a shade to them, and instead having a mesh, they would usually just have an open flame ignited over a natural fuel, and this was usually the other option of gas lighting before Edison bulbs and light bulbs were used. However, during the 1910s, electricity and its use became far more commonplace, and now homes had installments built into them, in the walls and in the ceilings. This is where I think things get interesting. Double bulb pan chandeliers were a common choice of design for kitchens and hallways, while smaller areas such as a bedroom or closet would contain a single flush mount. These fixtures were very ornate and had a leafy look to them with swirling painted brass and iron and metals, such as steel. Inspired by the 18th century French architecture, as France of this time period was considered to have some of the most luxurious looking styles of the world. While art is subjective, I do have to agree that in many antiquities you can find the influence of the leaf and flower pattern, even on things like chairs, doorknobs, and dressers. In the 1920s, more familiar types of installments you will recognize were out there. Not necessarily modernist designs, but designs that you will potentially see in older or renovated buildings. These were known as the Schoolhouse lights. As their name simply puts it, they were used to provide bright light with their ellipsoid shape and milk glass that were always opaque. This was also the time period that dish-shaped chandeliers became commonly used in hotels, subway stations, and homes, but there was a noticeable size difference between them. The glass shades acts as an upside-down lamp, so to speak, that the light emitting is not too luminous, but just enough that it can spread the light out in the entire room, but that if you looked up, you wouldn't be blinded. Another common way to have shades for your lights that was popular besides fabrics that did not burn at high temperatures. Stained glass was a popular way to decorate a lamp. While the style of stained glass originated in the 7th century AD in England, you had a lot of control over color and shape of the objects that you would want on your lamp. And stained glass was probably one of the most creative decisions over lighting when they overlapped in functionality. Visually, I think the 1920s offered some of the best variants of Tiffany-style lamp shades, both in color, the wavy melted texture of the glass, and the marble combined, creating for some visually pleasing artwork. The most basic of these were the grid, which used a round dome cage that encased the glass like a bowl but was covered with squares. Personally, my favorite of the stained glass look. It's simple, but it's not too simple, and I think it's a good start if you're wanting to learn how to create stained glass. With the modern style of lights, I think the biggest idea of postmodernism was to bring in a new idea of art and what it should be. But I think the consequences of these results from the 1970s to the 1990s was a much more simplistic style of lighting that was emerged between the original Victorianism with the mold and shape, while adding new and unusual colors to objects and sometimes unusual shapes too. The 1980s especially was a time where lighting completely changed and added different optical changes to one's home, such as neon powered lights through a fluorescent tube, even if it was a logo or a shape of a simple object that was traditionally used in marketing or commercial use. Even though colored lights and neon lights were not a new idea, they were not a new concept, mixing commercial lighting into your home became a much more common occurrence in the everyday person's life than seeing colored lights as a speciality besides holidays such as Christmas. I think that's where a lot of the 80s aesthetic vibes came from, was that futuristic, colorful LED feel to them. However, neon signs have been around since the 1910s. These lights use soft lead glass that is heated and twisted and fused together. This process is done by hand with the proper equipment and protection. I think the conflict of modernism has also gotten into light fixtures due to its lack of character and minimalism. While I do think there can be appreciation for these, and I can see the appeal, I personally think prioritization of sleekness and simplicity doesn't allow much room for creative thought, as these types of lights are mass-produced and it has more convenience to have a simple design instead of it being complex and intricate designed by hand, such as the earlier Victorian designs. As I said prior, art is subjective, but it is important to note the inspiration and reason why lighting is the way it became. The future of lighting seems to be introducing more and more of the light emitting diode, or LED for short. While LEDs cost more than incandescent, they are much more energy efficient and produce the same amount of lumens and are less fire hazardous, plus being easier to manage overall. Because LEDs are small and they can fit into casing, plastics, and your computer uses them in smaller forms of LED. For the future of lighting, the good news is that the internet exists, so if you want to collect older designs and fixtures, if that's your thing, it is completely possible. There's too many designs for me to go over in this video, so if you want a part 2, just let me know in the comments, or if this video gets good feedback, I'll definitely make a part 2 with even more research and more designs. If you are interested in my other video of why is the 1980s so aesthetically pleasing, here is the video right here, and I have other videos. Have a good rest of your day. See ya.